Hey, it's Thursday night in East Lansing. Thursday night in East Lansing. Gather around. Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Grab a beverage. Behave yourselves. File in orderly. 6 feet apart. We're going to have a good time. SpartanMag.com. We take some questions talking Michigan State football, basketball. The questions have been posted over the Underground Bunker message board earlier today. Got a lot of questions. Won't be able to get to all of them. So, once again, New Year's resolution, 4 months late. Going to try to do more than one of these through the course of the week. We'll have some fun with it. Get through about 10 questions, mailbag style from the SpartanMag.com Underground Bunker message board. Also, taking questions here in the live area, the chat area. And we'll talk Michigan State football. Always a lot of stuff going on, in my opinion. It's football season all year round. You guys know that. If you're a Michigan State fan, if you're a college football fan, it's always a good time to talk college football. Michigan State with commitments rolling in yesterday, close to another one. Tomorrow, going to have a chance at the Watson kid from Detroit Loyola. From Warren Mott High School. Interesting looking defensive lineman. We'll talk a little bit about that and Michigan State's chances. Also get into basketball recruiting a little bit. Take some questions about Michigan State football in general as Mel Tucker looks to get things going here during the offseason. Normally, at this point of the year, actually, this Saturday was scheduled to be the green-white game. So after this Saturday, there would have been no access to players, no interviews after Saturday. As it stands now, we might continue to get some more. As for everybody that's out there wearing a Detroit shirt today, I want to explain that one. Usually I've got other shirts, usually Rivals.com, Spartan Mag type of thing. But this is for my friends in Detroit. You know who you are. Hope everything is going well down there. I know Detroit has had a big struggle. Everybody knows that. And so this is out there for them. Also, it is the 1968 road font, Detroit Tigers. So that's for number 6, Al Kaline. I should have gotten this shirt in a 6, and I'll get one of those later because they do sell them like that. Also, Michigan State with a commitment from a Detroiter, Derek Harmon. So 3 good reasons to wear a Detroit t-shirt tonight. I'm sure you guys all support that. Felt like doing it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go right to the mailbag, and then we'll get to some chat area and some other things. All right, the first question comes from a guy named Third Generation Spartan. That's his handle over at the SpartanMag.com message board. SpartanMag.com is the church of what's happening now in Michigan State sports. That is the Michigan State website for Rivals.com. Get over there and check it out if you're not familiar with it. It's a good place to make a lot of friends and a few enemies. We all get along pretty well, I'd say. Been doing it since the beginning of the internet, basically. 1997, 96, something like that. That's not the actual beginning of the internet, but that's the beginning of the websites getting in full gear in terms of covering niche sports, college football recruiting. That's how we got going with it. And we appreciate all the loyal subscribers we've had over the years. Now, let's see. Third Generation Spartan. This was a question that was posed just a few minutes ago, and I brought it up to the top because it's something that all of you can start to talk about and provide some of your own answers to talk amongst yourselves on this, because I've only had a minute or two to think about it. You will have longer to think about it. Your answers will probably be, I'm sure, will be better than mine. The question is, who are the hardest hitters that you've seen in Spartan football since 1990? Top 5, no order would be awesome. Does Eric Morris make the list? I'm going to say no on Eric Morris. Good player. He was a good hitter. Some of the ones that come to mind since 1990, when you talk about like one hit, that Nehemiah Warwick hit against Wisconsin, was that D'Antonio's first year in 2007? Tremendous hit. Got flagged that day, even though it was legal for the time, but would be illegal today because he led with his helmet. Did not hit the head, but hit him here, leading with the crown of the helmet. Used to call that spearing in the old days. Tremendous hit. At the time, it was legal, but it was flagged just because it was such an awesome hit, I think. But I'm not sure Nehemiah Warwick, week in, week out, game in, game out, was a guy you could dial up and know you'd see a great hit all the time. Some of you might mention Seth Mitchell had a couple of good hits when he was a linebacker. Short-lived career because he was always battling injuries. Seth Mitchell had one memorable hit against Minnesota. You might remember Chris Spielman dubbed that one a slobber knocker. I would go back to Steve Wasilik on a consistent basis as a safety. 1993, when Michigan State was playing that deep cover 2 zone. They had everything underneath, funneling everything underneath. Norm Parker, defensive coordinator, and would just their whole scheme was to light you up after you made the catch, with the idea that as the game went along, you would get what they called alligator arms. You get a little bit fearful across the middle. Wasilic did a good job with that. Mike Iaquinillo, 1990. When you think about, was it 1990 when they beat USC in the John Hancock Bowl against Marinovich? Savage hitting by Michigan State in that game. So Iaquinillo, I'm going back to the early 90s because, Michigan State's been a hard-hitting team in recent years, but back then even harder hitting, back in this era, because that's, they would allow the completion underneath just to hit you. There wasn't much man-to-man at all. So there were some open lanes for a moment, but hard hits at the end of them. The bang stick, Harlan Barnett, late 80s. He was a senior in 88. The question was for 1990, so Barnett does not qualify. So go ahead, chime in. Let me know what you think about some of your answers to that question. As far as news in the last 24, 48 hours, nationally, the NCAA said that they will allow teams to meet with players 3 days a week, I think they're saying. They're allowing up to 8 hours a week of virtual meetings. That begins on Monday. Up till now, I think they've only been allowing about 2 hours a week. But they've had to institute some new rules because it's a new situation. Every school across the country is doing a lot with virtual meetings. Michigan State really had to hit the ground running well with that from the beginning. Good point, Kirk Baldwin. Sorry Canoe was a good hitter at the beginning of the Nick Saban era. I tell you who was an underrated hitter was... I forgot his name. Isn't that great? Walk-on from downriver. Early Key, Travis Key. And there's a recruit that reminds me of Travis Key that Michigan State's looking at a little bit. Was a walk-on with John L. Smith. Didn't do much, didn't get on the field. D'Antonio inherited him, turned him into a player, and I think he was a captain. Rob Fredrickson, that is a good one also. That was the 1993 team. They continued to play that style with the cover 2. Fredrickson, strong side linebacker. Christensen was the will linebacker. I think Fredrickson was the strong side. So who was in the middle? In 93, Reggie Garnett was as a true freshman. But Fredrickson was a good, solid hitter, down in and down out. But, your loud hits are usually going to come from your safeties, right? Richard Newsom, good one. All right, so that's going to begin on Monday. And more meetings and more teaching. And that's spring football in 2020. And now it's going to carry on into May more so than it's been in the past. NCAA allowing 8 hours a week through the month of May. Normally, after the spring game, coaches get on the road, especially in the month of May, travel to high schools. In the old days, they would travel to high schools to watch film because back then you had to go to the schools to have access to the film. Nowadays, film is at your fingertips. You get it quickly via the internet anytime you want it, anytime you request it. So the May travels are more about being seen by the recruits. You can't talk to them off campus. Being seen by them, talking to the high school coaches, finding out what's going on, finding out who the decision makers are for the recruits, maybe watching the recruits work out in the weight room, maybe watching them at track practice, maybe watching spring football. But all of that stuff is out the window right now. So now there's no travel in the month of May. So the coaches are going to be at home. NCAA allowing meetings with the players 8 hours a week, virtual meetings, first time ever. Interesting. As far as other news, yesterday we had coverage of SpartanMag.com. Harlan Barnett, the bang stick, back on the staff, was part of the teleconference yesterday. Always enthusiastic, very spiritual in his outlook as to why he's back in East Lansing, and he's excited about it. I heard that his very first meeting with the defensive backs, going into the defensive backs room, his first day back with them. The first official meeting and first position room meeting I heard was outstanding, emotional. All those guys, so happy to see him. Some of those guys have played for him in the past, the upperclassmen. Others were recruited by him but never got a chance to play for him yet. As people like Christian Jackson, Xavier Henderson was recruited by Barnett. Then Barnett went to Florida State. The upperclassmen, the seniors, they were with him a short time. Barnett said the only defensive backs that he had not met, did not know personally, were true freshman Angelo Gross, a mid-year enrollee out of Ohio, and Tate Halleck, who was a true freshman last year, played 4 games, redshirted. So Barnett got a chance to meet those guys. He's impressed with them. He wouldn't give any ideas about who was looking good to him. He's always kind of close to the vest on those things. If he gives you a compliment on one guy, he's going to compliment everybody. He didn't name anybody by name. But one thing he reiterated, no surprise, is that he says everything is a clean slate, open slate. What they've done in the past doesn't pertain to him. He's going to look at it clean slate, everybody's even. And right now, with all the players at home, whenever players are allowed to come back, he's interested to see who maintained the best shape, who comes in ready to roll, whatever that day is. And that'll have a big impact on who becomes the regulars and the starters in that defensive backfield. I asked him specifically about Dominique Long and Christian Jackson, 2 guys that he recruited but have had to wait their turn around here in the meantime. And his answer was what I just told you. Everybody's got a clean slate. He's looking forward to coaching these people. He thinks he's got something to work with. Myself, I think the defensive back room, depth-wise, high-end talent-wise, is down from where it was certainly during the heyday of the D'Antonio era. But I think it's a little bit down across the board. Maybe Barnett can help develop some of that talent. Would have helped a lot if he would have had a spring practice, 15 practices with those guys. Nobody across the country had practice either, but I'm sure Barnett would have liked to have gotten his hands on those people. So Barnett spoke. Will Piegler spoke, the running backs coach. We have articles on those guys at SpartanMag.com. Paul Konerdijk doing a great job for us at SpartanMag.com. Had an article about Harlan Barnett. I had one about William Piegler and a guy at 34 years old who's all about recruiting. But in the meantime, he's impressed some people also as being an offensive analyst at certain stops along the way, running game coordinator at one of his stops. So respected on the chalkboard and has also earned some respect recruiting on campus. Was able to go off campus for a few weeks at Colorado last year while he subbed for Darian Hagan as the running backs coach. Now ready to be a full-time on-field running backs coach, full-time on-field positional coach at the Power 5 level. And I think he's primed to get some work done recruiting-wise. He's originally from the Carolinas. He's going to be recruiting a part of Atlanta. So a Southern guy getting down south, going to be interesting to watch him go to work a little bit. And if you're new to SpartanMag.com, we've got that coverage plus some of the other coverage, some other coverage throughout the course of the spring of some of the teleconferences we've had up to this point. Now, let's go to question number 2. We'll get back to some other things. MSU Polo from Rockford, Michigan says, "Hi, Jim. Thanks for continuing to provide great content in spite of everything else going on right now. My question is about the latest recruits. Specifically, do you think that the in-state recruits are guys that the former staff would have snagged, would have gotten commitments from? Though their current rankings may not impress, the offer lists and film on these guys seems impressive." The main question, do I think that the former staff would have gotten these in-state guys? All right, as far as the in-state guys, most recent commitment, Derek Harmon out of Detroit Loyola. Big defensive tackle. About 6'3", 330. Let's see, what was... I'd have to, he was really eager to get that commitment. I would have to ask Corey about this. Corey Robinson doing a great job too. Corey Robinson, how about that guy? Great job recruiting coverage. Kenny Jordan also. Now, Derek Harmon, I didn't detect as much Michigan State interest in him prior to the new staff arriving, Then Michigan State offered the scholarship. Harlan Barnett personally offered the scholarship. And, he had offers from Purdue, Ole Miss, and Memphis. Committed to Michigan State a couple of days ago. And, I'm not sure how much Michigan State would have gotten in on him. That's an interesting one. I have to ask him a little bit more. He was just enthused to get that offer. As far as his ranking go, right now he's not in the top 30 in the state of Michigan. I think he should be. Some of the guys, it's hard to do those rankings. I mean, I'm glad I don't do it. I've done it in the December a few times, and it's very time consuming. But I think he should be higher in the rankings, and I think he will be. But mainly because he's a jumbo defensive tackle. A true nose type of defensive tackle. And if Michigan State ever wants to go to a 3-4 like Mel Tucker had last year in Colorado, he's a guy that could conceivably be a nose guard type of guy. And the football gods, exactly, Ron Armstrong, he's a one technique, or he's a zero, middle guard, or a 0 or a 1. He's a nose, a guy that can anchor it in there. And the football gods do not make many of those football players. Ron Armstrong, or a 0, I agree. He can play inside. They don't make many of those, and it's a hot commodity, an important commodity. And if you look at the current Rivals.com top 30 in the state of Michigan, there's only one legitimate, one technique type of defensive tackle, and that's the top player in the state, Damon Payne from Belleville, who's looking to go south, it looks like right now. So he's number one as a big defensive tackle, can play either spot. So you look through the entire list, okay, show me a jumbo defensive tackle. There are none. There's plenty of receivers, plenty of athlete/wide receivers. That's the most plentiful commodity out on there. And some of those guys are good players. But someone like Harmon, it's like a left-handed pitcher. They're rare. You need those guys. This is the best available jumbo defensive tackle in the state probably this year. I think that's a safe statement. That's firstly. Secondly, when I look at him, and Ron, I want you to look at his film too, I see a guy who's been coached. I see a guy who's big, but he doesn't get by just on his size. I mean, Derek Harmon, use of hands, crossing your face, quick arm over stuff, quick feet. He's not a guy that's just bullying people around and caving in the backfield just because he's the biggest kid on the playground. He's been coached, and you can tell he's been coached and put work into it to get some of those techniques down. With all that size, 6'4", 330, coachable. I think that he's going to be moving up in the rankings. But would Michigan State have gotten in on him? Not sure. It's a great question. Tyson Watson going to be deciding tomorrow, 3 o'clock. It's going to be airing on Rivals.com exclusively, 3 o'clock tomorrow. Tyson Watson, defensive end, Warren Mott High School, ranked number 12 player in the country. Now, that's one that Ron Burton was recruiting heavily. Ron Burton was in contact with him on a regular basis. So would Michigan State have been able to close on him? I don't know. Kentucky was involved, and Kentucky's been strong around here, Ohio and Michigan lately. Tennessee, Minnesota, Purdue, Indiana, Maryland, Syracuse. He's mentioned Toledo in his top 5. I think that's a nod to the coaches he has there. He has a good relationship with them and wanted to put them on the map, give them a nod of respect, which I respect. Would Burton have been able to reel him in? Great question. I don't know the answer to that. But the combination of Burton having made the initial headway and then Mel Tucker, Harlan Barnett coming in strong, helping get that done. So that's the type of situation where Tucker and his guys kind of closed on that one. So maybe they would have gotten him, but I think Tucker helped out the situation. Ethan Boyd, the tight end out of East Lansing. And I was asking Ron Armstrong about Boyd a little bit, who he reminds him of. And maybe he'll chime in on that later. Boyd is a guy with some big thighs at 6'7", 290. It's not a sloppy 290. It's thick where it needs to be thick. He's going to get bigger, but well-proportioned 290. And he's going to carry 300 plus nicely. I'm not sure Michigan State would have offered. I'm not sure how much Michigan State was in on him. Ron would know more about that. Ron is close. I hope he doesn't mind me saying, but Ron's close with the East Lansing program. And I'm not sure Michigan State would have offered. Hard to gauge who Michigan State would have offered, but I don't know how heavy Michigan State was in on him when the new staff came in, looked at his film, liked it, moved on him. He had offers from Minnesota, Vanderbilt, Iowa State. I have a feeling they might have let him get away. Just a hunch. Davion Prim, the running back from Oak Park. Michigan State had been having trouble with its dealings in Oak Park, one matter of speaking, in recent years. Was able to get Rock Baker. That was a big-time recruit early in the D'Antonio era. Good running back. Prim, running back, had an offer from Iowa State and then mid-majors. He broke the ice. He was the first commitment. Would Michigan State have offered him? I don't know. Michigan State might have been looking more around Ohio for somebody. Not sure. It's not a case where the previous staff would have been turned away, I don't think. It's a question whether they would have valued Prim and Boyd and gone after those, to answer your question. The bigger question is going to be those that are still out there. Rayshawn Benny at Oak Park, an offensive tackle. Jamari Budden, outside linebacker from Belleville. Andrell Anthony, wide receiver from East Lansing. I think Michigan State has a better chance with those guys, with the new staff and the new energy, and that gets back to what Mark D'Antonio was talking about when he retired, that he couldn't look guys in the eye and tell them truthfully that he would be there for 5 years. And D'Antonio's not going to lie to anybody on these things. He's not a snake oil salesman. So when he got to that level, that's one thing that told D'Antonio it was time to call it a career. And what a career it was. I hope I understand he's down in Florida. I hope he's doing well down there, enjoying some time down there. We saw on Twitter that he posted that he was watching the Michigan State-Ohio State replay from the 2015 game from the Horseshoe that year in November, and he just gave a tweet out congratulating the people that had a hand in that victory, and I chimed in on that thread a little bit. Hopefully I didn't step out of bounds, and hopefully I wasn't too obnoxious in taking that thing over. Not that I took it over, I just tweeted 6 or 7 things about the things going on down the stretch in that game, memorable game. It was great to be there. So that, I think that's going to be the big question. In-state, Benny, Budden, Andrell Anthony, Tyson Watson, can they go ahead and get him? Ruquan Buckley out of Wyoming, Godwin Heights, they've offered him. That's an interesting one. I think Buckley and Watson are similar players. Buckley has that offensive line option to his game. I think Watson is a better defensive lineman right now. I think Buckley, good defensive lineman. Neither one of those guys shows you a lot in terms of takeoff and turning the corner on film. That's kind of not what they do. Watson, defensive end in a 3-4, so he's a 5 technique. They don't really use him as like an edge threat from what I saw in his highlight film. Usually he was over that B gap and was into that gap quickly before the offensive tackle closed down him repeatedly. Just in the B gap, one gap football out of a 3-4, and shooting that gap with quickness, and repeatedly against several teams, the offensive tackles were having trouble closing down, getting a hand on him, and he was able to go through the guard tackle B gap like a turnstile, like some of those Old West doors, repeatedly in the backfield doing that. He's got some strength. Corey Robinson compares him a little bit to Joel Heath. I would agree with that. To the point that, Watson's 6'6", 260. Joel Heath was 6'6", 240 in high school. I remember seeing Joel Heath at Michigan State's camp. Joel Heath was slim back then, and they offered him, and I was like, well, okay, they know more about this than I do. It'll be interesting to see what becomes of him. Didn't quite have that great burst on the edge. Had the frame and strength and the will that put on some good mass, moved inside, became a defensive tackle, was part of that 2015 Big Ten championship team that played in the college football playoff. Joel Heath, frame-wise, similar. Joel Heath moved inside to become a defensive tackle. Tyson Watson is further along that development to be able to do the same thing. I think it could be a 5 technique if they do play a 30, a 2-gapping 30, like Tucker had mainly at Colorado last year, and they had both at Georgia and Alabama. Sounds like Hazelton wants to be a 40 type of guy. That's what the roster has been. He's been a 40 guy at Kansas State, but I wouldn't be shocked if they develop some versatility to do both in the future. And I think Watson is a guy that could be a 5 technique in a 30 front and a 3-4 or a 3-3. 2-gapping. Even though I haven't seen him do that on film, I think he's going to be strong as he gets older. He's strong at 6'6", 260 right now. He's the guy that's going to be committing tomorrow somewhere. Michigan State seems to be the favorite. Tennessee is in there as well. If you're not familiar with some of these recruits, ranked the number 12 player in the state. He's quick off the ball. Quick off the ball, and then strong, getting into that B gap. further along than Heath was at the same age. I even went back. All this talk about Kevin Vickerson. Vickerson's on the staff now as a defensive assistant. I was comparing him to Kevin Vickerson a little bit. I know Kevin Vickerson became a 325-pound NFL defensive tackle. But in high school, well, I looked it up. Vickerson as a junior at Michigan State was 6'4", 295. 6'4", 295. This guy's 6'6", 260. So Vickerson was thicker. I went back and saw Vickerson film from high school, 1999. Just today I watched. It was Detroit King with Vickerson against Detroit Henry Ford. It was the PSL semifinals. Quarterback for Detroit Henry Ford, Damon Dowdell. Wide receiver, Jonathan Orr, who went to Wisconsin. Tight end, Eric Knott. Remember him? Detroit Henry Ford. Detroit King had Vickerson at defensive tackle, Ernest Shazor, Braylon Edwards. Excellent game. And I watched quite a bit of it. I was trying to find Vickerson there. He is number 91. I saw him. And Vickerson was Vickerson. He had to be separated a few times from some of the Henry Ford players. He was emotional. Kevin Vickerson was emotional. And it's interesting because he and Knott became really close when they were teammates here. I remember one time, I talked about this on the VCast on the SpartanMag Live a week or two ago. There was a time when Vickerson was not happy with the John L. Smith coaching staff about something and was walking out. He was done, had enough. And Eric Knott was the guy who's like, come on, man, let's come back to practice. I'm not sure how often that happened, but we saw it happen once while media were there. I don't think Vickerson would mind me saying that. Vickerson, everything turned out great for him, NFL career. Now he's back on the staff. Last time I saw him, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, to Sound Mind, Sound Body Camp. It's a Detroit King guy. Interesting that Mel Tucker would reach out to a Detroit King guy like that, bringing him in. So I look forward to seeing Vickerson when I see him around campus once we get back to normal a little bit. But Vickerson, big 91. I want to see how Vickerson compared to Watson. And it was hard to say because the camera was not at such an angle that you could really see what gap he was getting into. I will say that Vickerson played up high a lot, and the motor was not always cranked up. I think if Vickerson watched his high school film, he would probably like to get out there and coach himself in 1999. But not quite Watson is not quite a Vickerson, more of a Heath, but more physically advanced than Heath. All right, let's see. Go ahead and ask some questions. I'll get to those in a moment. The question was, I think the question is going to come up later about if I would compare some of these people to anyone. All right, also, Polo had a bonus question. Some of you might not like this, but the bonus question is, you mentioned your affinity for hockey frequently. What's your favorite all-time NHL team? Mine is a close call between the 96 Red Wings and 08 Red Wings. I'll go along with that 97 Red Wings team. That was fun. That was the year they broke through. It hurt me a little bit because they got rid of two of my favorite players at the beginning of the year, Cicerelli and Paul Coffey. They traded those guys right before the beginning of the season. Two Hall of Famers, traded them, brought in Shanahan. Shanahan ended up wearing an A that year, and that put them over the top. Huge blockbuster move at the outset of camp. And remember, the year before, the Red Wings were something like 62-13, had a long run of some great seasons. Lost to Colorado in the semifinals, kept getting far, but couldn't get over the hump. Got rid of Primo, got rid of Coffey, got rid of Cicerelli. They traded Coffey and Primo for Shanahan. Cicerelli, they got rid of him in a different deal, I think. But you talk about blockbusters, and it worked. It did. So, and the truth is, I used to love the Red Wings. Growing up, a lot of people liked the Red Wings. I liked them. I liked what happened in, was it 87 when they went to the Final Four? It was kind of a fluke year against the Oilers, the Oilers, the Goose Loonies thing, all that stuff. Bob Probert, that was a fun team. But, there were some tough times. But once they got good, I'd moved here in 93, Spartan Magazine. 95, internet started taking off, 96, 97. I was so focused on Michigan State football and basketball, and it was such a demanding job that I didn't get a chance to watch much hockey. When the Red Wings finally turned the corner and won the Stanley Cup, I'd kind of had gotten off the bandwagon, and that was always my personality for some reason. I loved the Pistons, through the collision, Dantley and Vinnie Johnson and all those years. But when they finally got to where they won the NBA title, by that time, the bandwagon was too crowded, and I got off the bandwagon. I mean, I was there in the Silverdome when they played the Knicks in the playoffs, or was it New Jersey? And Knicks was at Joe Louis Arena. New Jersey might have been at the Silverdome, and they beat New Jersey. That was the first playoff series they'd won in a long time. I was all into it in high school then, going to the Silverdome and stuff. Loved it. By the time they became world champions, I had checked out of the bandwagon. Red Wings, I was with them as a youngster, high school, college, and once they got in all those disappointing defeats with high scoring teams, but once they like broke through and won the Stanley Cup, the bandwagon was crowded. I got off the bandwagon. I don't know why I'm like that, but I'm not a bandwagon jumper. I'm a bandwagon evacuee. Not sure why. I should probably see a therapist and find out why that is. I need to tweet this out and see if we can invite some ne'er-do-wells in here. How many ne'er-do-wells do we have right now? I saw Coyle filed in earlier. He was not tardy. That's good. Been looking for Old Tuck. I'm not sure if Old Tuck is around or not. If not, that'll be another demerit for him. There's the tweet that goes out. And let's see what we've got here in terms of some of the questions. Got victory for MSU. Chiming in early. It's great to see Ron Armstrong here. We'll be having a skull session with him real soon because I've got to talk to him about a lot of things. I always appreciate his expertise and insight. Always. Good friend, too. Good guy. Good person to have around town. Good for the community in a lot of ways. All right. Christian Trainham says Mall 286 in the house. That's good. That makes the house a better place. Tom Coyle saying hello. Hope you're doing good, Tom. Keep the faith. Christopher says, just finished 18 straight days of work, so about to pour myself a bourbon. Good for you, man. Good for you. Everybody's free to tell us what your beverage is. Beverage of choice. Hopefully nothing illegal. There's nothing illegal you can drink anymore, is there? Depends on how old you are, I guess. Tom Coyle, Goddard, go green. Coyle, go white. Caleb Tallman says, have listened to every one of these since their inception. First time catching one live. All right, Caleb. Nice to have you here. Behave yourself. Take a seat. Everything will be fine. Let's see. Randall Owens, April 16th. Great day for a SpartanMag live. Watching with a bourbon on the day after the normal ending of tax season. Bourbon is the drink of choice tonight, sounds like. I should look into some local distilleries when things clear up. Maybe this is a niche audience for them. Caleb Tallman says, from the mountains of western North Carolina, any chances we pick up a transfer quarterback? I know JT Daniels entered the portal today. JT Daniels from USC. I feel like if we would have had spring ball, that would have been a factor. Good point. If they'd had spring ball, they would have gotten to know more about their quarterbacks. JT Daniels, any chance? It'll be tough. I mean, it's a 5-star guy from California. Was ranked, the number 2 or 3 player in the country coming out of high school. So that is a really heady background from Santa Ana, California, modern day. I mean, big time blue blood high school, went to a big time blue blood college football program. A California kid coming out of Michigan State. Michigan State has shown interest, but I'm hearing Oregon is in there. So you're asking any chances? I think Michigan State is interested. I could say more, but I guess I just did. I know that they've expressed some interest. That's nothing against their current guys, but when someone like that is out there, you express interest. Tucker, coming from the Pac-12, would not have to introduce himself to JT Daniels. Daniels knows full well what he did at Colorado last year. Daniels last year, injury in the first or second game, missed the year. Another quarterback came in, so now he's looking to move on. So Oregon is a situation. They've got a guy who's going to get drafted top 10 next week. So Oregon's going to have a lot to sell for a guy that might prefer to stay on the West Coast. All right, so let's get back to the questions. We'll get back to those the live chat questions in a moment. Looks like we've had a few people come in from the Twitter sphere. It's good to see you guys. Come on in, pull up a beverage. We're all friends here, most of us, except for old Tuck. It's a joke. Just joking. All right, here we go. Ward44 says, all right, I'm just going to get right to it. Have you heard anything further about Kareem Mane and how his virtual visit went? I think that was on Tuesday of this week. Kareem Mane, the point guard from Montreal. Those of you on the Final Forum are aware of him. Final Forum message board at SpartanMag.com. 5-star guard, top 30 type of guy, 6'4.5" point guard. Izzo has gone up north to see him a couple times. Liked him. That's the guy they decided that they really wanted. Didn't really go after any transfer guys. That's the guy they wanted. I said here 3 or 4 weeks ago, I don't know how you get that guy when everything locked down. How do you get somebody when you can't have official visits? Well, it's the spring of 2020, and we're seeing people commit without taking official visits. Carlik Jones from Radford transferred to Louisville without taking an official visit. Michigan State got a commitment from Gabe Neely, the corner from Miami, without an official visit. And the Booth kid from Maryland, Michigan State's in good shape with him. I don't think he's ever visited here officially or unofficially. So, in this day and age of the lockdown, are players more open to making a commitment without an official visit? Well, in Kareem Mane's situation, he might have to be. He's visited Maryland and Marquette. He's more serious about Marquette. Had a virtual visit with Marquette this week. Supposed to have a virtual visit with Pittsburgh probably as we speak. Alabama and Memphis have been interested also. The Rivals.com reporter from Memphis is predicting he's going to go to Michigan State. So sometimes some of those writers hear it from their own coaches. So I've not talked to him. I reached out once, but that's someone I should try to get a hold of to find out how good his sources are. Sometimes those are real good sources. For instance, if Michigan State's recruiting somebody and they fall out of it, then they know they're not going to get him, and they might tell a reporter, yeah, we're not going to get him. He's probably going to go to LSU. You hear those things. That's called sourcing. So when that reporter from Memphis put in a fan cast or whatever it's called at Rivals.com, what is it? I should know that. The expert pick on Michigan State. That was a little bit of an eyebrow raiser. And Matt Charbonneau did a good story about Kareem Mane, called up Corey Evans from Rivals.com. Corey was quoted in there. Corey Evans, Rivals.com writer. Speaking with Evans and Eric Bossi, it's been hard for them to get information on Mane. Mane's a guy that's been pretty guarded with his information, and that frustrated Michigan State a little bit 6 or 7 weeks ago, trying to find out where they were with him. But now, Michigan State is going full bore, virtual visit. I made some phone calls today, didn't get through to any of my best sources to find out how it went. Mane's not a guy that's going to give a whole lot either. Jake Weingarten had some good stuff out there with stock risers, with information about schools getting involved, and there was a virtual visit, and 1 or 2 quotes from Kareem Mane, but again, Kareem is not going to say a whole lot. The interesting situation there is with the lockdown, he is a borderline first-round draft pick type of guy. He's 19 years old. He's grade 13 in Canada, which means he's eligible right now to join the NBA draft if he wants to. He does not have to go to 1 year of college, and he's borderline first round. So if you're Kareem Mane, think about this. This is the same thing for Xavier Tillman, too. Nobody knows if there's going to be on-campus schooling this fall. No one knows where things are going to be in May and June and July. Right now, of course, no students are on campus. All schooling is online. A lot of people think that it might stay that way in the fall just to keep things straight for a little while longer. If that's the case, then there's no students. Pretty much all the athletic directors have come out and said, not officially, but it seems to be the consensus, if there's no students on campus, you can't ask athletes to come on campus. You're not going to have practice. That means no football. That means no basketball until January 1st when spring semester starts. For most schools that are on semesters, the school first semester goes all the way to the end of December. So if there are no students on campus in the fall, there's no football, there's also no basketball until at least January 1st. If you're Kareem Mane or Xavier Tillman and you're trying to decide if you're picking to go to college, what are you really choosing? If you choose to go to college in 2021, will you even be allowed to be on campus in 2020? I think that's going to be a hard thing for Michigan State to recruit against for both of those guys. So, I mean, that's a sticky situation. I mean, just common sense. Both of those borderline guys, I think Mane, as much as Michigan State likes him, I've not heard that. I know that I know the NBA option is an option, but it's always been an option for various reasons. But now with the lockdown situation, does that tip the scales? Just something I'm wondering out loud. I've not asked Izzo and those guys specifically about that. You cannot ask them to comment about a recruit, but if you ask them generally in a recruiting situation with the lockdown, if someone was thinking NBA, does that hurt you? You can ask general questions like that. I suspect I know what the answer is there, but meanwhile, he's also spoken with DePaul and, Alabama, Memphis. Interesting company there. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure who all is involved in the decision-making process there, but they love him as a player. I know that. All right, Bill from Byron Center says, he says, I recall one season in which Nick Saban faced 7 new head coaches in a given season, and he spent with his staff 1 week on each of those opponents during the offseason to get ready for the next season. He says, assuming there is a 2020 season, how does Mel Tucker and the staff plan for each of their opponents? Will they be able to spend as much time as 1 full week on each team? Given the amount of attention to recruiting right now, are they able to carve out time looking at opponents' films? They'll have time to do that. Yes. And I'm not sure if they've gotten into that yet. That's usually something after they get back in May. The programs do a full week on each opponent. I would imagine so. When Saban did it, I'm not sure a lot of teams did it that way. A full week, maybe just 2 or 3 days. I'm not sure. Good question, but they will not be lacking time to look at film, whether it's recruiting film or looking at upcoming opponents. Don from DeWitt says, hi, Jim. Thanks for the continuing great content in strange times. I hope all things are good in the Comparoni world. Thanks, Don. Same to you. He says, as you continue to get a chance to know the staff, the Michigan State football staff, are there any thoughts you can share about anything that surprises you or particularly impresses you at this point? He also says, do you think Imani Bates comes to Michigan State for 1 year? Do I think Imani Bates ends up at Michigan State for 1 year? Flip a coin. I'm going to say 51% yes. 51% yes. Good point. I just got a message there from Ron Armstrong saying that the NBA is looking to push the draft back to July or August. That would delay things. Right now, so if they did that, right now the deadline is June 15th, the date by which players have to make a decision whether they're joining the NBA draft or not. So if they move the draft to July or August, I assume that would delay those decisions as well, which could help Michigan State with Tillman and Mane, possibly. A lot of different factors this year, but the outside the lines business, sports business, still continues to roll. But, with Bates, the Gatorade Sophomore of the Year, I just look at what's going on. He comes to Michigan State for March Madness, was at the Michigan State Ohio State game when Michigan State clinched it. I think 1 or 2 others. He's there with his dad. His dad he's a good basketball dad. He's a good one. And he's exposing him to the college game. I think there's interest on Imani's behalf. He's in the locker room after a couple of those games. There's interest on his dad's behalf. So we all know that the collective bargaining agreement is going to change, or whatever it's called in the NBA, and they're going to allow one and dones when when he is currently scheduled to come out as a high school senior. So the question is he going to reclassify? Well, I've not heard anyone say that. I'm just going by what I see. And what I see is him at college games as a very interested observer. And I see his dad interested in it. And I see Michigan State going to his games and giving him attention like he is a recruit. So if Michigan State's doing that, what do you think they think? And they've had those conversations. Nothing that's come out publicly, but those things have been talked about. And he is close with Gabe Brown. Everybody sees that. And they work out together. So Michigan State would be in good position to get him. I think there's a solid chance he reclassifies. And that's no inside information. I wish the young man well. Handles himself well. Maturing kid. Crazy talent. It's a pleasure to have him in the state of Michigan. All right, so Don says, as far as football goes, are there any thoughts about the staff that surprises me or impresses me? I counted up, Mel Tucker hired about 26 guys, and that doesn't include the football coaching staff. I mean, he had to hire his coaches, but also I'm counting 26 people if you count interns, GAs, analysts, operations people, creative. They've got a creative staff, and the on-campus recruiting specialist. I mean, the resumes, the calls he had to take on those, the interviews to get all that done, and hire coaches as well and get some traction going recruiting-wise. I mean, just the ground they covered in a short amount of time. I mean, the analysts, TJ Hollowell, Ephraim Reed, Nick Ruffing, Travaris Tillman, the on-campus recruiting specialists, Lisa Ben-Cham, and we've heard a lot about her, Tessa Akers, Lauren McCree. These are brand new people. Operations people, there's a bunch of them. We brought Jeff Martin in, Scott Aligo, Darian Harris, Cody Cox, Ben Mathers, Will Price, Cole Brown, Sean Levy. The creative director, Derek Markle. Director of Creative Video, Austin Flynn. Graphic designer, Lizzie Otten. Graphic designer. And you've seen the work that these people have produced, because you in the public, you see the graphics that are going out for recruits. You're talking about putting a new coat of paint on the program. The timing of that was really good. D'Antonio was great, old school in a lot of ways. Tucker came in. I heard from day one that he wanted to be, week one, and I said it here, that I'd heard that he wanted to be high-tech and emulate a lot of the things, bells and whistles, that Georgia had going. And that's proved to be the case. So that's the part that surprised me, how quickly they were able, in a matter of like 2 weeks, for Michigan State to have a different front porch to that football program, and we were all able to see it on our phones, on our laptops. So that's the part that's surprised me and impressed me. And I think a lot of you would agree, man, Michigan State's just got a different flavor right now. I'm not saying it's a better flavor. It's modern. It's with it. We'll have to wait and see what happens with the wins and losses. Somebody has to set their plan and work their plan their work their plan, and go how they want to do it. Tucker's doing it this way. There's more than one way to get things done. You can do it like Iowa, Wisconsin, and D'Antonio have done at Michigan State. To do that, the margin for error is small. The margin for error, any way you want to do it, is small. But it's a different flavor, and it's interesting. And it's been impressive. And if they start winning when that guy gets on the recruiting trail with his assistant coaches and this support staff, watch out. Shuey says, any chance of a shortened football season starting the first weekend in October with Big Ten conference games only, no bye weeks, and with fans allowed to attend? Any chance first weekend of October? Shuey asks. I don't see that happening. That would mean, it gets back to what I said earlier. If the students are not on campus, there's not going to be football. So if you're talking about delaying it to October, that sounds to me like the students didn't arrive until later, and I don't know if that's feasible or if it's going to happen or if it could happen. So I think NFL, I'm thinking the NFL could delay a little bit and keep an eye on things and then maybe start in October. But college, I think the only way they have a season is if students are on campus, and that's got to be nationwide, because what if students are allowed on campus in some states but not others? Well, then you can't have a college football season. So it's either going to start on time, I would think, or it doesn't happen at all. Or, if students are allowed on campus, is there a chance students would come back across the country, but football still not be allowed? I hadn't thought about that one. It seems like one would go with the other. Tasman asks, do you have any insight or details as to what goes into these virtual visits, virtual tours of facilities, or what's going on, or just meets and greets with coaching staff? You can probably imagine what they're about. I've heard, Lisa Bencham. I think it's Cham. She's the young lady that came in from Arizona State. You see her on social media too. She's into it. A breath of fresh air with football. It's my understanding she kicks it off a little bit. But like any visit, you're going to have time with your position coach and probably your area coach, maybe some strength people, maybe some academic people. A slideshow, for lack of a better term. I'm sure I've not seen what they show them, and I'm sure whatever they're doing, each program is probably going to want to keep some of it under wraps because they're not going to want it to get out, because they're not going to want opponents to see it and emulate it. No one's going to want to see what each other does, firstly. Secondly, they don't want it to get out because when someone comes in for a virtual tour, they want that to be the first time they've seen these images. They don't want it to be something they've already seen on campus. So they save some stuff, and, you got the pom-poms and you got the music and all those things. So with their creative staff, full-time people putting those things together, I've not seen it, but I'm sure it's pretty well done. They were able to get the kid from Miami based on the virtual visit and other things. So then Mel Tucker, as you'd imagine, bats last. So that's what I'm hearing. Basketball, a lot of the similar ideas, but with basketball, it's a newer thing because I'm not sure they expected to have. No one expected to have a virtual visit program put together. Football got an earlier start on it because it's football recruiting season right now. No, yeah, it is for basketball too with the juniors, but that's one area where football has more people in that department than basketball does. So coming out of this, are all basketball programs going to have quote-unquote virtual visits? Maybe. Is Michigan State up there with football on these things right now? I'd say no. I wouldn't expect them to be. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't expect them to have been the case. But they do have a guy named Tom Izzo that's pretty good, maybe even on a computer. It's not his thing, maybe, but he can make it his thing. He's a chameleon in a lot of ways. Mile High is his name. He's from Golden, Colorado. And he says, thanks for all you do. Appreciate these during these trying times, as always. Thanks to you also. Right back at you. He says, do you have comparisons for each of the current football commitments to past players that might help us gauge them as players? That's what I thought. I knew that question was coming up. Football commitments. Derek Harmon, the big kid from Detroit. When I think big kids, another Detroiter, I've talked about this before, but Jonathan Hankins is the guy that comes to mind. Jonathan Hankins was 6'3", 320. He was a 3-star Detroit, number 20 player in the state. Teammates with William Golston. That was the year they recruited Golston. Michigan State could have had Hankins, decided not to take him. At that point, Michigan State had Antonio Jeremiah in the program, and Jeremiah had trouble getting into shape and getting to a point where he could get on the field and stay on the field. And like I mentioned last week, that's right when the hyperspeed offenses were just coming into vogue. Rich Rodriguez and so forth. So having a big defensive tackle, there were some concerns as to whether those guys could remain every down players. Ohio State took him, did great things with him, NFL player. 6'3", 320. Harmon is a little taller weighs a little more. Hankins, number 20 player in the state, 3-star. Michigan State didn't offer him. So it's not like Hankins was great in high school. Harmon, I'm telling you, with his hands and everything, interesting. Harmon, I like Harmon. So Hankins is the guy that comes to mind. He's in better shape than Antonio Jeremiah was. You're talking about 330-pound defensive tackles. There have not been a lot of them at Michigan State in that category. Some of you guys can mention some. I'll think about them. But I like Harmon. Gabe Neely, 6'4" corner. Tony Lippett, wiry, strong, thin, quick, deceptively fast when he gets running downfield. But Neely, I'm watching him press coverage, and I'm expecting him to be, as a junior at 6'4", playing defense against these wide receivers in South Florida. I'm expecting him to be awkward and having trouble catching up. But he jams, and his hip turn is okay. It's not bad at all. With a guy that tall, sometimes a hip turn can be faster than you think. It can be deceptive. I'm not seeing the hip turn being a problem. But like his first step coming out of his hip turn, earn a W, a W cut, breaking on the ball, quick. I didn't expect a 6'4", 17-year-old to be that quick. I mean, he's a teenager, getting used to that body. Quick. I was like, what the hell? Quicker than Tony Lippett was. Now, Lippett was a quarterback in high school. Lippett came to Michigan State's camp. They either put him at corner or wide receiver or both. One of those things, they had him do something he hadn't done before, and, he picked it up. He was good. They offered him, and we know that he was a tremendous player. Was he Big Ten wide receiver of the year, but was drafted to be a corner in the NFL. Special player. Deceptive, Tony Lippett. And, of course, the big hit in the Baylor game. In the Cotton Bowl, that was fireworks. So Neely is Lippett. I looked at Stanley Jean-Baptiste. Do you remember him at Nebraska? I mentioned him on the Underground Bunker message board. Baptiste was the big corner for Nebraska when Michigan State lost to Nebraska in 2015, the only game Michigan State lost. Baptiste was, they would press, and he did a lot of holding. They would just water ski, and they would just never get flagged. And then was it 1 or 2 years later, Michigan State played Nebraska again, and Michigan State lobbied for it, and they got those holding calls early in the game. But Baptiste was 220, big corner, 220. I don't know if Neely projects to be that type of body. And I posted this on the board. I went back and researched Jean-Baptiste also. He was a junior college guy. He was a guy from South Florida, but he was 6'2" coming out of high school. He was 6'2" in prep school in North Carolina. Goes to Nebraska, grows another inch. Goes to junior college, grows another inch. By the time he got to Nebraska, by the time he was a senior in 2015, the guy was probably 23 years old and big and a pro. Second-round draft choice. Bounced around the NFL for a while. Now he's in the CFL. Gabe Neely. So when you're talking about tall corners, there's not been a lot of them. He's more of the Lippett flavor than a Jean-Baptiste flavor. Ethan Boyd, the tight end, 6'7", 290. East Lansing, big thighs, moves well. I'll let Ron think about that. As a matter of fact, I texted Ron a couple hours ago and asked him to come up with somebody. I don't know if he did or not. I think he did post somebody, but I didn't recognize the name. I didn't have a frame of reference on the name. I'll have to keep thinking about that one. He's bigger than Sean Poole. But Boyd, I like Boyd. Good prospect. Davion Prim, Corey and I have talked about him with Eli Collins. I liked Eli Collins' film. You guys might remember that. Remember, he was offered by Wisconsin, and that spoke volumes as a running back. And he was a hitter on defense, too. But I just liked Eli Collins as a true runner, as a pure runner, more so than Connor Hayward or who was the other guy in that class that got playing time immediately? Collins did not get playing time, but I thought that he was a better pure runner than Hayward or the other guy. But the other guy was the kid from Muskegon, the quarterback, Ladarius Jefferson. But Jefferson and Hayward, thanks, Christopher. Jefferson and Connor Hayward were further along in terms of pass protection. So you have to have your pass protection down if you want to get on the field. Because even if you're a better runner, if you're on the field and they know that you can't hang in pass protection, that tells the defense it's not a pass. So you got to have somebody that can do both. They have to be able to pass protect. That's why Eli Collins didn't play as a true freshman. But all the while, I told you on these podcasts, not this one, but the Skull Session, even while he was redshirting, I said that I liked his film in high school better than those guys as a pure runner. And then once he got his pass protection down, he surpassed those guys as a ball carrier, Eli Collins. I liked Eli Collins throughout. I thought he was underrated as a recruit. I like Davion Prim. We've only seen junior film. I'm not putting Davion Prim up at that level because I had a lot of respect for Eli Collins. Not up at that level just yet, but maybe a little bit watered down version of Eli Collins right now. With another year to go, puts together high school film, maybe he can catch him in that regard. Style wise, the Collins thing is similar. A couple more questions here. We're already to an hour. I wanted to keep this under an hour. I'm going to fail. Spefton from East Lansing says, I recently saw a CBS mock draft that had Xavier Tillman going in the first round, actually ahead of Cassius Winston. What's your best guess on the odds of his returning to Michigan State next season? I'm going to say less than 50%. I would have thought less than 20% or 15% a month ago, but the coaches are serious about it not being a done deal. They think there's a chance he comes back. But like I said a few minutes ago, I don't know where that would stand in relation to the unknowns about next fall school-wise. If students are not allowed back on campus, then the players won't be back on campus. Then you can't practice. Then you won't be playing college basketball until at least January. I think a shortened season is more likely in college basketball next year if things remained closed down. So the other thing is, of all the sports that are capable of playing in the current health landscape, I think Dr. Fauci said a couple of days ago that he could foresee a pro league having all the players in one town, one location, in their hotels, don't go anywhere, and basically quarantine the whole league. So which sport is most likely capable of doing that? It'd be basketball. They only have 12, 13 players on a team. Can you reduce the support staff? Maybe. A couple of hotels. So if the NBA can do it, would they have a G League? That's a good question. Maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't have a G League. But if you're drafted, you make the team. Would you rather be, NBA is more likely to be in business next fall. So when you get to next November, would you rather be part of a college team that can't get back to campus or part of a pro team that is quarantined somewhere and having a semblance of a regular season? Maybe by then the NBA is not even quarantining anymore. I don't know. But the other side of that coin is, what if you're Xavier Tillman and you're drafted late in the second round and you don't make the team? Now what? Usually you just filter down to the G League. What if there is no G League? Well, then usually, or you could go to Europe. What if there are no European leagues next year? And do you really want to go abroad in a situation like this? Or would you rather, with your wife and two youngsters, just stay in school? And even if there is no school, just stay home and take your courses online. He's an excellent student. Man, tough time for him to make a decision. I feel for him in that regard. But good for him. He's put himself in position that he has options. Good, talented kid. He's not a kid. He's a man. He's a good one. Stater 218 out of Grand Rapids says, what's your preferred divisional alignment for the Big Ten? And this question is a little bit off the wall. Or are you on the no division bandwagon and have the two top teams go to Indianapolis? Sounds like Stater is on that bandwagon. No, I think it's fine the way it is. It makes sense the way it is. It's tough for Michigan State. Going back when they realigned, I think it would have been better for Michigan State to be in the West for reasons that are obvious now. Back then, a lot of people thought it was better to be in the East because it would help you with recruiting in the East more. Maybe it would, but I think the thing you need more than anything is an easier schedule. If you can put Michigan State in the West and guarantee you play Michigan every year as a protected guarantee game, that would have been probably the best route toward success, most pragmatic approach. And I always wondered if Hollis ever lobbied for that. I think he wanted to protect the series with Northwestern to a degree and Michigan. I'm not sure. I'd like to ask him that someday. What went on behind closed doors there? A couple more questions here. The mailbag part. Michigan State University, our friend of the board, says, do you think there's going to be football in 2020? He said, I think you gave it a 50-50 chance last week. He says, I'm starting to think it's more like 90-10, 90 being no football. And he says, which would impact us fans, MSU, and our new staff dramatically, in my opinion. It would impact all students and all fans and all programs and all staffs and all coaches. Yeah, it would not be fun. It'd be rough, but I don't know. I mean, I know it'd bother a lot of you guys, but look, what do we do in college football? We sit around all year talking about the upcoming season all year. All year. It's what we do from January, February, March. We look ahead to September. Through spring practice, we talk about September. You get into the summer. Steve Spurrier used to call it the talking season. It's talking season. June, July, August, talking season. All we do is talk about football. We love football. We talk about football 353 days a year. There's only 12 games a year plus the postseason. 12 times a year we get to see football. The other 353 days a year, we talk about it. So it's not like we're not accustomed to talking about it. The interesting thing is that these rosters are still being put together. So one way or another, when the doors open back up, each of these teams are going to have a roster. And in the meantime, they better keep those rosters spruced up. And right now, we've talked about the rapid boil of recruiting right now because there is a rat race chase for all of these recruits that are deemed to be scholarship worthy right now. Whereas some of those players that you would rather see in camp, there's not going to be a camp. Some of those players you'd rather see in camp or in the fall, there might not be fall high school seasons. I'm not sure. So all that you're going to have is junior film, maybe for the entire group. So the known commodities are commanding some really heated recruiting battles. It's interesting. I've never seen an August like this. I'm sorry, never seen an April like this. Might as well be August. So, none of us were there for it, but back during World War II, they shut down Michigan State football in 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, came back maybe in 46. Michigan retained football during the World War II years. So did Army, of course. And Navy. But Michigan State had intramural football at Spartan Stadium back then. Somebody at the federal level decided which schools were for which things. And Michigan State, for the war effort, it was intramural football and whatever things they had on campus. I should talk to Bob Bow about that. He knows that. And there's others. Anyway, shut down football. But, back then, it was shut down for a lot of reasons. Very dire situation, right? By the time football came back in 46, within 6 years, Michigan State won a national championship in 1952. This is a case in which Michigan State would not be held off while everybody else plays. Can you imagine that? What if Michigan State had to shut down and Michigan kept playing for 5 years? That's the way it was in the early 40s. So, the older I get, the faster time goes by. This shutdown started after the Ohio State basketball game, pretty much. I can't believe that game was 6 weeks ago. Cassius Winston Senior Day, that was 6 weeks ago. To me, I've been working. Maybe you guys haven't because of whatever your work situation is, but we've been going full tilt, and I can't believe it's been 6 weeks already. I don't know. I just, I look back to, when Michigan State played basketball against Kentucky and New York. It's been 6 months ago. Does it seem that long ago? I'm of the opinion that It wouldn't be good, but whatever needs to be done, whatever. I know some people are on different sides. I don't know what's going to be proven to be the right approach. But the time's going to go, and it's going to go by fast, in my opinion. Because I'm always like, a lot of people are like, I can't wait for football to get here. I'm always like, when I get into June, I'm like, I love football, but I'm good with June. I'm good with July. Let's just take a breath, have some dip, and to quote George Carlin, and enjoy the summer a little bit. And to me, September and August are always closing in too quickly. To quote Bob Seger, you have autumn closing in, and it just comes quick. To me, the summer goes by fast. So, to me, whatever happens, the sun's going to come out of Michigan a couple weeks. We'll have May, June, and then whatever's going on then, next thing you know, it's going to be August. Then it's going to be Thanksgiving. The older I get, that's the way it seems. Some of you that are younger are probably like, Comparoni, you're crazy. What are you talking about? And some of you that don't have a work situation that has kept you busy like we've been busy, maybe you're going stir crazy at home like, man, I can't believe these 6 weeks have been the longest 6 weeks of my life. Maybe that's what you're saying. So maybe I'm out of touch. I don't know. But to me, yes, it will have an impact on the game, on the fans, on everything. But it's going to happen at some point. And it's interesting that these athletic directors have talked about the possibility of having part of the season in the spring, or maybe a full season in the spring. April, like a March, April, May next year, by the time things calm down. Because if students are not back on campus in the fall, maybe they come back in January, becomes a spring sport. That allows them college football to roll on. It allows the college athletic departments to get a little bit of cash flow going. If they don't have it, I'm not sure what the case is there. If they're not playing by next spring, that means that there's been a recurrence and a second wave and some serious problems like 1918. 1918, they kept playing. Spanish flu year. 1918, World War I, they kept playing. It's a different game, different situation these days. If they had known in 1917 what the Spanish flu was becoming, I think they would have shut it down. They didn't know. But we also would have missed one of the best Michigan State football seasons ever. 1918 was the year Michigan State went undefeated. They beat Wisconsin, which was the Midwest League champion, Midwest Conference champion, which was the forerunner to the Big Ten. Basically beat the Big Ten champion. Beat Michigan. Michigan was not in the Big Ten at that time. They opted out because there was some pissing match about something about playing Colgate or something. I don't know what it was, but Michigan left the Big Ten for a while. They were, pissing and moaning about something. So they were out, but Michigan State beat Wisconsin, beat Michigan, and beat someone else and went undefeated. Retroactively, when they awarded national championships in 1932 or 1924? That's when national champions were retroactively named. So all these Michigan national championships in 1901, 02, 03, there were no national championships. The phrase national championship did not exist in 1901 and 02 when Michigan won, I think, 7 of their 11 national championships. 7 of them were even more mythical than the mythical national championships because they were awarded 20 and 30 years later retroactively because somebody came out with a mathematical formula in 1932 to try to figure out who was the best team in 1932, Michigan or Illinois, or maybe 1924 with the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame, something like that. So national champions. So somebody went back and said, okay, let's decide who was the national championship in 1888. Princeton. And who was it in 89? Princeton. Who was it in 1990? Princeton. Princeton's got like 17 national championships. And Michigan got a couple of those, 01, 02, 03, 04. They outscored people 400 to nothing in 1901 when the ball was round. And I mean, I've not seen any film of it because there was no film. Anyway, 1918, who was the national championship in 1918? I've looked it up before. It might have been Harvard. Might have been Harvard. Let's take a look here. Was it Pittsburgh, maybe? Oh, Michigan and Pittsburgh. Wait. According to Wikipedia, which is not always a trusted source, there was no consensus champion, with the official NCAA Division I football records book listing Michigan and Pittsburgh as national champions. All right, must have been a different year because Michigan, it looks like, went 5-0 that year. Well, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, I've went bird walking too long. That was the year of Gideon Smith and Blake Miller. Michigan State undefeated in 1918. That was the year Michigan State beat Notre Dame at Old College Field with George Gipp, I think. Anyway, that was in the throes. World War I had just ended, and they celebrated the ending of World War I at halftime of the Michigan State-Notre Dame game in 1918 at Old College Field. Anyway, got through it in 18. Maybe should have shut it down. But shut it down World War II, came back strong. Whenever it happens, it'll happen. And some fans will be lost along the way. There'll be less interest. There'll be fewer people going to the stadium, but it'll return as a big television sport again. And what I just went through, I took too long to explain it, but whatever happens, you'll probably hear me say that a few more dozen times. But that's the first time I've said it, that college football fans are patient. Michigan State fans are patient. And as long as there's recruiting, the importance of building the rosters are going to remain important. Let's see here. Eric from the U.S. Virgin Islands says, love all the open access with Tucker's staff lately. Do you get any indication from Ben Flieger and Matt Larson if this is going to be a continuing trend or a short-term solution? Really hope there will be open practices when things resume. Well, Mel Tucker is in favor of these interviews. Otherwise, they would not be happening. But from a sports business standpoint, it's important for Michigan State to, fan some of the flames of fan interest. And that's what this is for. With some of these teleconferences, we're doing articles on some of the new coaches. It helps introduce the new staff to the fans, which is important if they're trying to sell tickets and just create and fan the flames of interest. So that's why they're doing it. And Tucker wants them to do it because it's good for, he wants fan interest also. He also wants to get stuff out there for the recruits. And also he wants his own staff members to become media savvy for various reasons. So, yeah, Tucker's behind it. So as long as he's behind it, that helps. If Tucker was not behind it, then it might not be up to anyone else as to whether they do it or not. But I think it's been good. The only people that we've not talked to yet, I think, are Mike Tressel and Ron Burton, two holdovers. So usually the interviews have been on Wednesdays. I'm hoping that maybe we get Tressel and Burton next Wednesday. And then the Wednesday after that. And like I said, by this Saturday, usually things are cut off because usually spring football is over. Green-white game was scheduled for this Saturday. So, that spring's gone by fast, right? So, maybe we get Tressel and Burton next Wednesday. I'm hoping. And then maybe the week after that, that'd be a natural time for maybe Mel Tucker to meet with us for the first time since February 24th and do it via Zoom or via, teleconference like we've been doing. That takes us almost into the month of May. And then we'll have to see what happens with Kareem Mane. I wouldn't be surprised if we have an opportunity with Izzo at some time in May. But, yeah, I think this is still going to, I hope it keeps happening. I think there's enough to talk about. I certainly have enough to write about. But there will reach a point where they will have taught the players maybe everything that they can teach them on a virtual basis. They are limited to 8 hours a week. And anyone that's been in coaching knows that you don't feel like you've ever had enough time to cover everything. So the coaches will be going top to bottom on everything from here on out. And recruiting is going to go all the way to December. So bad thing is that they can't talk about recruiting. That would be great if they could come out and do a teleconference and say, yeah, we really want this Watson kid. Can't do that, though, for obvious reasons. All right, so that's it for the mailbag. I stretched that out too long. I apologize about that. We're 19 minutes behind. Let's get to the chat area here. Randall Owens with a clink, clink, clink. All right, victory for MSU. Same here. Kirk Baldwin says, sorry, Canoe was a good hitter. I already touched on that. I agree. Rob Fredrickson, we talked about him. Ross Weaver, Paul Goddard says, Ross Weaver was a good hitter, pretty good player, young in his career, a guy that got big. And for some reason, Ross Weaver looked good, but I don't know if he tightened up or what. But the second half of his career was not as good as it looked like it was going to be when he was a freshman or sophomore. Good guy. Um, Ross Weaver ended up losing that starting job, as a matter of fact. Rob South is late. It's another demerit for him. Going to be detention for him soon. Alaska Stoneworks says, I hope they're just ripping it in the weight room. Who is overseeing strength training now? The new strength coach is Novak. He's sending workouts to them. I heard Utah's coach talking about that they sent their players home with exercise bands. Michigan State, they've got different workouts, own body weight type of workouts. What I found interesting, and I want to do some more questions about this. I'm kind of interested in. I'm been surprised that players today do not have old-fashioned bench racks in their basements or in their bedrooms. I mean, in the 80s, most high school students, a lot of them had, just your basic bench rack. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. You just, maybe get a hand-me-down from an uncle or something. I understand there's a lot of people that are underprivileged that don't have it, but it's like everybody's relying on their weight room in their high school. And some of those weight rooms in the high schools are great these days that nobody has anything at home. I mean, you see like Jacob Panashuk doing squats with tires on, or on a makeshift barbell, or AJ Arcuri with cinder blocks. That's been a really interesting thing. I think, Ricardo Cooney had that story about Joe Bocci a couple days ago at SpartanMag.com with Joe Bocci looking forward to the draft, staying in shape. And he goes to the playground and does pull-ups on a swing set. And I think Bocci's dad was big into physical fitness and weight training. So I guess they're so into it that everything is done off-site. So nobody has anything at home anymore. That's been a big revelation to me. Maybe I'm out of touch on that too, but that surprised me. Ron Armstrong in. Yeah, Armstrong says he has surprisingly light feet for a guy that large. Talking about Harmon, I agree. That defensive tackle, I mean, that guy, like I said, they don't make many defensive tackles. The football gods don't make many 6'4", 325-pound guys. And they sure as heck don't make many that can move. And then he's got the hands to go with it. Ron Armstrong says he's a guy that under the previous staff would be a pain in the butt at Iowa for 3 years. In other words, the previous staff would have allowed him to go to Iowa, and he would have went there and been a pain in the butt for 3 years. Yes, and with Iowa's two-gapping, although they don't two-gap as much as they used to, yeah, he would have been a pain in the butt. Yep, I hear you on that one. Andrew Stoddard says, is it a good 340? Not yet. I mean, he's got, like Ron Armstrong says, I think he'll play at 325. He has some tightening up to do, and that'll happen in the college level. But it's easier to, I don't know, it seems like it's easier to take some weight off and tighten up some of that baby fat than it is to add with most guys. It's been my observation. Armstrong on the LT says on the left tackle, I think a poor man's Aldris Pete. He's a really big kid. Talking about Boyd, the offensive tackle from East Lansing, who's committed to Michigan State. He is a big kid. Big thighs, 6'7", well-proportioned, moves well. When I looked at him, he's got some straight line ability. I've not had a chance to see him move laterally a whole lot. And it's too bad we're not going to get a chance to see these guys at camp a little bit more. But Christopher Trainham says, for Harmon, what's the player comparison at that size and weight? Now, I went through John Hankins a little bit. I already touched on that a little bit. Ron Armstrong, much better. There's a coolness factor around the program right now. I agree with that. I think that was in relation to whether or not the previous staff would have gotten some of these in-state recruits. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show says, what's up? Sorry I'm late. Okay. I think I might have put a link to your most recent, maybe 2 podcasts ago. I put a link to your show here. But hey, Untitled Beer Ranking Show guy. I think it's Callie Spartan. Is that your name? Go ahead and put a link here in the comments area beneath this, and I invite people to go check it out. Kelly Spartan and his grandfather open up a new beer, and they can do their reviews, and they talk about things. And I encourage you guys, Kelly Spartan, to talk about more things. Let us know what you're thinking about anything. It's entertaining. Ron Armstrong, he has a Big Ten body, talking about Ethan Boyd, I assume. Kenneth Roberts says, hey, Comp, any chance on JT Daniels? I already talked about that a little bit. I think there's interest on Michigan State's behalf, but getting a former 5-star Californian to come out to Michigan State, it's going to be difficult. I've got more here than I thought. I've got more comments than I thought. I've lost my place. Here we go. Ron Armstrong. Nah, man, Vic has a code. Talking about Vickerson, I'm not sure what you mean. You'll have to explain that to me later. Victor from MSU talking about picking up Larionov was big, and they got Larionov. They had him the year before when they lost in the conference finals to the Avalanche, I think. But he was a big addition to the year when Shanahan helped put them over the top. I might be wrong about that, but I thought Larionov played the year before also. And I didn't realize that the year before, Konstantinov led the NHL in plus minus. He's a second team all NHL player. Gritty player, but really hated, but respected. I watched him back then, but I wasn't as close to it to realize. I didn't know he led I forgot that he led the NHL in plus minus. All right, Mr. T-Bone says the sound is not as loud as last week. It's a little bit late for me to know that. I'm not sure why that would be. I don't know if you could turn it up and help it in that regard. I hate to hear that. Alaska Stonework says he's having a nice glass of port tonight. Bourbon sounds cooler. And then he's throwing up. All right. Ron Armstrong says Washington will be a player. Not sure which Washington we're talking about. Michael Maher says, if you're looking for local distilleries, I work for Coppercraft out of Holland. Well, Michael, you let me know. And we'll have to send out some samples to some people and man, we'll come out there and do the show out there if you want. And we'll have some people that can test it once things lighten up or get back going again. Also, Coppercraft out of Holland, if you want to put your name right here, we can talk about that too. I hope people don't mind that, but we're all in business, aren't we? We'll support yours. You support ours. We'll have a good time, man. I like that idea. Grant Sarkeesian says, any word on how Dotson is doing after his injury? With the new offensive staff, it seems like tight end will be an important position. That's right. Would be good to see Dotson out there next year. Yes, it would be. I think I asked Gilmore about it in the teleconference last week. I'm almost certain that I did, and I don't remember what he said. I posted on the bunker what he said, and I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I don't know if he would have played this spring or not. But yeah, they need Matt Dotson to have a year. And he was doing pretty well last year, lost for the last 4 games of the season, was doing okay. I think he was hoping for more. Christopher Trainham says, wow, just watched a clip of Mane on YouTube. I didn't realize that he has a 7-foot wingspan. Yeah, that's strange for point guard, isn't it? Band Vase says, what do you predict the starting 5 to be next year? Basketball-wise? Well, you got Gabe Brown, Rocket Watts, Hauser, Bingham. And who's my other wing? Langford, maybe? I don't know if Langford's going to be back. I'm missing some. Oh, Aaron Henry. Ron Armstrong, easy fix. Everyone goes to a quarter system like MSU did before. Start school late September. Start camp Labor Day weekend. Games start first week of October. Okay. I like that idea. Is it really an easy fix? Can the universities go to a quarter system? In this day and age, a lot of people are doing a lot of makeshift changes, aren't they? I'm not sure you can get everybody to do that, but I like that idea. Victory from MSU says, how many monitors are you looking at? I'm looking at 2, this one and that one. Ron Armstrong, Jarrell Worthy, comparing him to You're comparing the Detroit kid, Harmon. Jarrell Worthy? Oh, you're asking about like just, how many. I see. I'm trying to remember what we were talking about. That's when I posed the question about which, true one techniques have we seen over the years. Raekwon Williams, although Raekwon plays the three also, right? And mainly the three. Jarrell Worthy was one, yeah. Harmon's, Worthy's smaller, quicker. Jefferson, all right, okay. Brandon Browner, Virginia Tech. Ron Armstrong talking about. Nolan Schroeder. Any chance Donovan Edwards comes to MSU? Not from what I'm seeing or hearing. If they play football this fall and Michigan has a problem, because they're just like real close to having a boom the wrong way, right? And if there's football this year and Mel Tucker goes 8-4 and is exciting, that one possibly could get interesting. But as of right now, looks like a steep hill to climb. Michigan State's working on it though, but it's gonna be tough. Doors fan 91 says, sorry if already asked, just got here. What Spartans do you see getting drafted next week, and what rounds? Willikis 3rd round, Scott 5th round, Williams 5th or 6th, Cody White 7th. Well, Bocce, I think it's looking like it's going to get drafted. But there's so much misinformation that if somebody likes Jake Hartbarger, they're not going to tell us. They're not going to tell anyone. They're going to want to keep it a secret so they can draft him in the 6th round. There's always surprises. Willikis, 3rd round might be a little high. Josiah Scott, 5th round. Good speed, ran a good 40. Little-ish, but I think Josiah Scott's a pro in the slot. Raekwon Williams, this time last year, people thought he'd be a first 2-round type of guy. I've seen some mock drafts where he wasn't taken. So rooting real hard for Raekwon Williams. I've got to believe he's a pro player. But I don't know. So I'm expecting 3 or 4, I guess. Cody White's an interesting one. You're predicting 7th round. Went pro early. As it turns out, if there's no football in the fall, that turns out to might as well been a decent decision. Go pro, free agent, get cut, and then you just start your professional life outside of football. Or if he gets drafted, maybe he will. I don't know what the scouts thought of him at Pro Day. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with that one. Ron Armstrong, if there's no G League, they'll probably expand the roster. Another good point by Ron Armstrong. We will have Ron on audio here one of these days. I'm working on it. My IT guys is struggling. I'm my own IT guy right now. Doors fan 91 says, I was told Hollis did lobby for the West from someone who knows Barry Alvarez. Would not doubt it. I never heard that for sure, but there were some indications. And Hollis, on some ways, would bite off a little more than he could chew from a competitive standpoint, i.e. scheduling Alabama to play football. But then Alabama backed out of that one. But Hollis was competitive. He liked to compete. And part of me thought, well, maybe he wanted to be in the East to be with all the big boys and do battle with them. But like you said, I'd heard, I had heard that before, or heard some indications that, and you're hearing that from someone that knows Alvarez. So I don't doubt that at all, and I think I can see why Michigan State would have wanted that. In Hollis, when he talked about when all that was going on, they asked each school what were some of the rivalries that you wanted to preserve. And Hollis, I think, talked about Northwestern. So, of course, Michigan. But if he's talking Northwestern, he was talking Northwestern more than Penn State. If you can see what he's thinking there. Northwestern, you go to Chicago, you can mobilize more alumni there. It's good when he gets people together night before the game. Try to get some donations together. Some of you know what that's like. So playing Northwestern every single year would have been a good thing, especially with Notre Dame coming off the schedule. So Hollis tipped his hand a little bit on that one. And being in the West, if they could preserve Michigan to play every year, be in the West, easier schedule, preserve Northwestern, bada boom, bada bing, would have been the way to go. Would not have been ideal for Michigan, because Michigan would have had to deal with Penn State and Ohio State every year, and then Michigan State is their guaranteed crossover. Not a good deal for Michigan. Not an ideal deal for Michigan. Now, Michigan, when they're good, they can deal with that and they can beat a lot of teams. But that would have been a case where Michigan's schedule would have been naturally harder than Penn State's or Ohio State's because Michigan's crossover would have been harder most years. Their guaranteed crossover. I'm not sure Ohio State would have had a guaranteed crossover. Michigan might have been the only one that would have had that type of guaranteed crossover. Probably Indiana and Purdue like it is now. But maybe no others. But, yeah, I think Michigan State, it doesn't surprise me that you say that that's what they were lobbying for back then. Did not turn out that way, though. And at the time, Michigan State was prepared to do battle in the East the way it is. But over the course of college football history and the foreseeable future, it's a more difficult road to navigate now for Michigan State. A couple more questions here. MSU still second best team in East overall. Why should we shy away? Penn State would love that. Okay, it's your opinion. Might be right. Rob South says, I think Lewerke is a sleeper and could go around 3 or 4 next week. 3 or 4. Well, I mean, the thing about Lewerke, I mean, the accuracy issues, and some of the people at the Combine told him that sometimes there's flashes of brilliance when they watch him, but not able to hammer it out on a consistent basis. So I think he's a free agent with a chance to do something. When I look at someone like David Blau at Purdue, who went as a free agent for, I think, the Patriots, was cut, but the Lions liked him. The Lions played against him either in a preseason game or in one of those combined practice sessions. They liked him and picked him up as a free agent, midway into the year when Matt Stafford was hurt and I think someone else was hurt. And before you know it, Blau was starting in December for the Detroit Lions as a rookie free agent. I was at that game when the Lions were playing the Buccaneers. I'm watching Blau, and I'm like, Brian Lewerke as a sophomore is better than that guy is right now. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what it seemed to me. Lewerke had trouble as a junior when he was injured. Last year, just a little too erratic. Great kid. I wish him the best. But does he have talent more so than Blau? I think so. But with Lewerke last year, just the accuracy, just simple accuracy, it's a big stumbling block. Getting drafted, I'll believe it when I see it. I doubt it. I think he gets a free agent tryout somewhere. Andrew Stoddard says he can make a practice squad as an undrafted free agent, but that's about it. Maybe 7th round flyer. Right. Ron Armstrong, weren't we the Aggies? Yes, in 1918, Michigan State was the Aggies. Hayden Vischer says, what's up, fellas? I know I'm tardy. You are tardy, Hayden. And that's a non-happy face for you. I see it right there. Any word on what the latest is with Brad Salem? I thought he was one of the better ones on Mark D'Antonio's staff. I've heard that there might be some openings as an analyst somewhere, but nothing concrete yet. Christopher Trainum says, best wins of the Coach D era. Rose Bowl. Beating Iowa to get to the playoff. I think those are the top 2. Hayden Vischer on Ohio State, beating Ohio State to get to the Rose Bowl, beating Iowa to get to the playoff, and then winning the Rose Bowl. I think those are the top 3. Hayden Vischer says, make sure everyone hits the thumbs up button. Thanks, Hayden. I'm 100 minutes into it. We need, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you subscribe. Thumbs up button is good. It helps get the algorithm cooking for us a little bit more and helps more people become acquainted with the SpartanMag brand. That's what we want, right? We want subscribers. We want more friends. And I appreciate all you guys helping us in that regard. All right, so Carter 917 says, anything on Donovan Edwards? No, not right now. Great running back, West Bloomfield, Michigan State, playing catch-up. Hard to play catch-up right now. I better go ahead and turn this off because I'm gonna lose my battery here. Weaver was the guy on Manningham in 07 when Michigan rallied to beat Michigan State. No, Weaver was not on Manningham. That was Jalen Hayes. I agree. The older I get, the faster time passes. Thank you. Ron Armstrong says, I found an old school solo flex for my son. That's a good one. I personally am not exactly a great spokesperson for workout machines, but I've got that Chuck Norris, Christy Brinkley thing, and I like it. Call me what you will. Nolan Schroeder says, was Ted Gilmore known as a good recruiter at Wisconsin? An okay recruiter, but not like, great elephant hunter or anything like that. Victory for MSU 09 says, so what are you doing when you walk off camera to your left? I'm checking on things. Ron Armstrong. I'll tell you what. This is commercial free. I'm not able to hit a cough button or go to a commercial. So sometimes when you're rolling like this and it's a radio show, you can go to commercial, and then you can cough like crazy or wipe your nose or something like that. I battle allergies a little bit, so it's nothing I want to do on camera. Full disclosure. Ron Armstrong, you're welcome. Ron Armstrong. Brandon Browner was a 6'4" corner from Virginia Tech, plays for the Seahawks. All right, that's beyond my frame of reference. I've not seen him play, but that's a good one for people to talk about. Hayden Vischer says, is there a way you could create a Zoom call and post on the bunker? That way you could have Corey, Paul, and Mooby and talk. I've thought about that. I've looked. I'm sure there's a way to record it. I've not looked into it yet. I think some of those Zoom calls look, it might be fun, but I think we're just going to stick with the podcasts. But we might look into that because with Paul, we can't do VCasts right now. So that's something we could look at. If you want to look at, see more of my ugly face. But I think I've got the audio set for the podcast, the Skull Sessions. They're going to be better next time I have Corey on. It's going to be a cleaner line, and I'm looking forward to utilizing that. I need to get it for some other things too, but I'm still working on it. Chris Trainham says, Hayden Vischer, not sure if you can do that in Zoom. I know you can do that in Microsoft Teams. Okay, it's good to know. Lottie says, say yay if you can read comments. I can read comments. Yay. Old Tuck says, the new defensive back recruit from Florida reminds me of Vincent Donaldson. So that's Old Tuck just being Old Tuck, bringing in a name from the early 90s era. Vincent Donaldson was thin, 6'1", not as tall as Gabe Neely, but that's Old Tuck being Old Tuck. Appreciate it. Ron Better says, it's better for him not to be drafted instead of the 7th round, talking about Lewerke, and that's a good point also. Ron Armstrong, Big Mooby, with a game-high 11 points. 11 good points from Ron Armstrong today. Strong. Appreciate that. I think I've gotten through all of them now. Are there more? I think that's all of them. Good. Got through them. My camera's going to run out of juice here in a moment. I went too long. Hour 40 again. I was hoping to go like 40 minutes. What I need to do instead of 10 questions, I need to hold it to 5 and not have those bird walks like you guys are talking about. But it is what it is. A lot of you guys wanted to be shorter. I failed again, so I fouled out. Big Mooby with 11 points. It's a point a minute, man. It's doing good. Anyway, it's going to wrap it up. Last time I said we wanted to do another one by Monday. That was Friday. I'm 3 days late on that. But it was Weaver? You're saying it was Weaver? Ross Weaver? But Jaron Hayes was the guy that gave up the touchdowns. You're talking about the comeback at Michigan Stadium when Michigan State was winning 34-17 and goes into overtime, a cold, windy day. DeAndre Cobb. You're talking about that game. Braylon Edwards coming back, touchdowns. That was 2004, I think. Jaron Hayes had him most of the day. Maybe at the very end, Ross Weaver was covering him. But I think Hayes was Edwards. Braylon Edwards. Oh, you're talking about Manningham. Edwards. I got Manningham and Braylon Edwards messed up. Thanks, guys. You got it. You're on top of it. I see some people talking about twice a week. We can look at that. We want to start doing more skull sessions, especially when we get into June. And there's a lot of good people out there. There's a lot of things to say. And we want to hear more from you guys as well. Appreciate everybody checking us out. You'll see us soon, maybe by the end of the weekend. I'm looking at Sunday nights, maybe Monday night, but appreciate the interest and the support. Everybody be safe. Take care of yourselves. I care about you guys. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for checking out Spartan Mag Live.